What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Sunday Drive, and today we're going to talk about how to start learning how to work on cars. So I know a vast majority of you guys, my subscribers, are very car savvy and like to work on your cars and stuff, because I do a lot of higher end DIYs with stuff that you wouldn't really normally be doing if you just starting to work on cars. But there have been a couple people who have been DMing me on Instagram and asking me questions, and how do I start going about cars, and how do I start actually wrenching on it, and how do you learn all that stuff? And before we start getting into techniques on learning how to work on cars and all that sort of stuff, I want to establish what I've sort of come to notice is that there are two types of people who work on cars. There are people who work on cars out of luxury, and then there are people who work on cars out of necessity. And there's a huge difference, I think, in learning style and learning how to work on your car. Now, people who work on cars as luxury, sort of you have another car to drive, you might have an E36 or a Miata or something to work on the weekends, sort of your project car, but you have something newer, more reliable as your daily driver. And that's perfectly fine. That's a perfectly good way to learn how to start working on cars and start messing around with modifications and stuff like that. The way I find the people who get it the quickest and get good at it quick are those necessity learners. So I myself had to learn out of necessity. That basically means that the car you drive every day isn't very good. Like for me, my first E36 M3 was an absolute pile. Some of you guys who watched the series on that, you guys know what I'm talking about. The thing was just an absolute bucket. And when it broke, I didn't have the money to fix it. So I either fixed it or I didn't have a car to drive. And that's sort of what I mean by necessity. And if you learn through necessity, I think it's personally kind of the best way to learn, because it forces you to learn. It's not like, the people who I see who, let's call them luxury, who have the luxury of working on cars and learning how to work on cars, they typically take a long time to get their car finished or to get it running or to get it addressed, because they don't really need to. If the car doesn't run right, it's not their only car, so they're fine. That's fine, again, that's fine for learning, but basically what I'm trying to say is people are lazy, is that I've noticed that people are lazy. And so the best way to learn on a car is having a car that's a piece of shit and always breaks down. That's the truth. Because a lot of my friends had good running cars that were perfectly daily drivable, and my car wasn't, so I was always fixing it. And I quickly surpassed them mechanically, and I started doing stuff that they couldn't keep up, So if you want to get good at working on cars and get good at working on cars quick, get a car that never runs. Because that kind of puts you in the spot where you have to get it done, and if you don't have a car to drive. So you're much more, I should say, motivated. You're much more motivated to figure it out and get it done, Now, the best advice I can give to anyone who wants to start learning how to work on cars is simply put aside your ego. I know everyone, especially in the car scene these days, everyone wants to be the freaking top dog and kind of have the pride, have the pride, like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. That's like the worst way to go about learning new cars, learning how to work on cars. The biggest thing, the easiest thing you can do to help yourself the best is to ask for help. Asking for help and getting information is going to be like the #1 way to start learning how to work on cars. Because I'll be honest, first starting to work on cars, it's pretty intimidating. You pop the hood, there's freaking lines, cords, wires, hoses everywhere. It's, it can be quite overwhelming, and I've seen that from a lot of people who don't like to work on their cars because it's just too much, Resources like YouTube, resources like forums, other auto shops, they're going to be a huge help to you. And that's where most of your learning is going to come from. Most of working on cars is freaking sitting at a computer learning shit, oh, I need to do a head gasket, I need to do this, I need to do like a valve cover gasket replacement, whatever. A majority of that replacement, or if you don't know what you're doing with it, is going to be sitting at a computer learning. Because with the internet, you have such a vast network of people that you can talk to, and forums and threads you can read. And I almost guarantee any problem that you're going to ever have with your car, someone else has already had. And that's kind of the case with the E36. It's like every problem that's ever been a problem, someone's already addressed and someone's already fixed, So the information's all there. And another main one is going to be, getting to know your car, whatever car you have. If you have an E36, start learning and researching about the engine. How many, it's got dual cams, okay, it's got single vanos, this is how the idle control circuit works, this is how the vacuum routing is, this is where the ignition coils are, you know, things like that. Just figure out how the whole motor setup works. And so when you actually go to start working on the car, you have an idea of what's going on with the engine. And the main thing that I see coming across people who don't really work on their cars before is just getting over that initial freaking hump of actually start working on your car, getting past that intimidation point to actually start wrenching on it. And the truth is, you just gotta freaking send it, dude. The best way to learn is by doing. Again, I learned out of necessity, and I didn't have like anyone to help me out, really. You know, I had forums, I had threads, I had things like that, and so I would talk to all these people, but I never really had anyone there holding my hand when I was fixing the car. So, you know, if you can make friends with a local technician at a shop, you know, just head down there when the shop is open and ask them, you know, what could be causing this? Okay, it's leaking oil, where could it be leaking oil from, you know? And just talk with them, get the lingo of the motor, you know, the valve cover gasket, all that sort of stuff. Ooh, that is a buttery 6 Series. Oh, I want an E24 so bad. But just get familiar with the car, you know, read some threads on how it's done, figure out what tools you're gonna need to start doing the job and start working on it, and then just freaking go for it. I guess as the old saying would go, learn from your mistakes. And when you first start working on cars, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna put on a gasket and it's not gonna seal right, you know, you're gonna mess something up. But that's kind of how it should be, you know, because you learn from that. If you don't seal a valve cover gasket right, you know, you learn how to make it seal right, and then you become better at working on cars because of it. And so it's kind of like the learning curve for everything in life. You go in, you try, you make mistakes, and you know, you fix it and you get better at it. Another good piece of advice that I could give you guys is when you first start working on cars, do some actual repairs on cars before you start modifying cars. Because fixing a car, like fixing a leaky valve cover gasket or oil filter housing gasket or finding a vacuum leak or anything like that, is going to be a lot more simple, a lot more straightforward. Like, there are so many E36 DIYs on replacing an alternator that it's, you know, anyone can find anything on it. You start modifying it, you start looking at a turbo kits, there's a lot less information. The information's scattered and it's a lot less solid. So it's a lot easier to start learning how to work on cars by doing simpler and just preventative maintenance jobs. You know, don't go out of the box and try to turbocharge your car if you've never worked on a car before, because there are a lot of things that can go wrong very quickly if you don't know what you're doing. That's just a general rule of thumb though. That being said, one of the first big jobs that I did on one of my cars on my M3 was actually an auto to manual conversion, which is kind of modifying, so I can't, you know, take what I say with a grain of salt. Everyone's gonna learn at their own pace. And you know, if you're at car meets or whatever and you find someone who's got a more modified car than you, ask for advice. You know, talk to them, get them to know. Maybe they'll come over and actually help you work on your car and you can learn from that. Another good way is to maybe go to like a tech school or something. The community college that I go to offers like a wide spectrum of automotive classes that you can take. And a lot of people do learn that way, and it's a pretty good way to learn. But what I found is it offers very general knowledge. It's sort of just rule of thumb stuff. So like, you know, you learn about twin cam timing systems, you learn about things like that, you know, all sorts of motors, but that trade school will not teach you, unless it's like a BMW specific trade school, it won't teach you how to install vanos, you know? So even going to a trade school like that, there are still some more specialty things about whatever car you drive that you're gonna have to sort of learn and source on yourself. I learned by doing at my own house. I think the first day that I walked into class, my first automotive class I've ever taken, I walked into it, parked my E36 that had already been manual swapped, it already had been like lowered on suspension, already had a cooling system rebuild, already had an M50 manifold conversion on it, already had a cylinder head rebuild, already had, you know, interior pieces. I had already done all this stuff to it, just learning and figuring it out by myself. You know, so you absolutely don't have to take automotive classes or go to a trade school to really start learning how to work on cars. Does it help? Absolutely. There are a lot of things that I learned going to school for it that, you know, you don't really learn by working on like E36s. For instance, you know, valve lash, how to adjust valve lash on pushrod motors. You don't learn that working on an E36 because it's an overhead cam, it's not a pushrod motor. Timing distributors, ignition lights, things like that, you don't really learn about unless you have like multiple cars and they're all very different. You know, there's a lot of information that you don't learn by working on your specific car, you know. I will say I am one class away from getting a certificate of automotive technology, I don't count it as how I learned to work on cars, if you know what I mean. I didn't learn to work on cars at school. I learned to work on cars at my garage, at my house, because that's really where all the learning did, you know? That's where I sat down and read forums and talked to people and chat with other people who've already done the jobs, you know? That's where I learned to work on cars. Whatever make, model you got, there are so many forums. There are owners forums, there are DIY threads, there are YouTube videos, you know, there are booklets on this stuff. Talk to people, you know, figure out what your car is, what you need to do to get it done, how to start working on it, and then build the confidence to start working on it, and then just freaking rip the thing apart and get it done. All right, I will see you guys next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Keep it fresh, and I will see you guys later.